Sony has bought Evo. So Evo, for those that don't know, the Evolution Champions Series is the biggest and best fighting game event of the year. And just to give you a quick context of like, especially Swinny and I, last year's Evo pre-COVID, I'd actually already scheduled leave from work so that I could just stay at home and watch Evo and just, watch it live as it's happening. And then obviously with the whole COVID thing and then as we'll maybe touch on, Swinny, all the events of last year and what's probably precipitated the fact that they've sold the tournament. So probably the key things to note are, each year Evo will announce what are the main stage games. So there's usually about 9 games. And that in itself is a bit of an event because it's a very small editorial board that would select the games. And then, very famously and somewhat infamously, Smash Brothers has come in and out of contention for being at Evo. The tournament did start as a Street Fighter tournament, so I don't think there's been a single year where Street Fighter hasn't been one of the headliners, and that's usually whatever the latest mainline Street Fighter game is. But other games like Tekken have actually really come to the fore in Evo, and then also a lot of more technical fighters have actually gained a lot of popularity at Evo, and then also just the fact that because Evo is the biggest tournament of the year, it is a huge opportunity for marketing for the fighting games that do participate, especially ones that are a bit more niche. So, Swinny, did you want to cover the events of last year and sort of what probably precipitated the selling of the brand to Sony?
Yeah, so I'm not going to say I know all the information, especially off the top of my head, but basically, with everything, the pandemic last year forced the physical version of Evo, which is held in generally Las Vegas every year, to not happen, as you'd expect, like all gaming events. But then on top of that, so what they had done, was then announced Evo Online, and had chosen a selection of games that had pretty well known, were pretty well regarded for their netcode, and had essentially set up, they're working on an online tournament structure, and then a whole wave of allegations hit the whole gaming industry and outside gaming as well. It was like a second wave of Me Too. I forget what it was called. There was another hashtag movement at the time, but it and one of the big people that was embroiled in those allegations was one of the co-founders and then CEO of Evo, Joey Kula. I can never pronounce that, but
Yeah,
Mr.
Wizard is what everyone called him. Yeah.
And we're not going to get into those allegations, and honestly, I've kind of blocked them from my mind, but they were not good in any way. And essentially, what we started to see when those allegations hit, some of the big names started pulling out of the Evo Online event, and then they just cancelled the whole thing. And at that point, people had no idea what was going to happen at Evo. And it seems like they've essentially, this is almost like a reset. And they're basically, it's almost like it's being restructured something completely different, because we've got Sony joining forces with this esports organization known as RTS to essentially make this purchase and
real-time sports,
and build it up. I can't remember the exact name of it, what RTS means, but it's. One thing, I'm super excited that Evo is continuing, but obviously there's a lot of questions.
Yeah, and what happened was, as I think you said it really, really well, Swinny, obviously the allegations, Mr. Wizard did leave the organization that he started, and he was really the face and person behind Evo, as it was known back then, and as it's always been known up to this point, really. When games got booted out, everyone blamed Mr. Wizard, or if games came in, they thanked him. He did leave the company, but I do think Evo had a bit of a sort of a mark on its name. So to me, it makes perfect sense that they've kind of come out publicly and said, hey, like this has been sold. Because I think it gives them an opportunity to reset and still retain, themselves as being the biggest fighting game tournament in the world. The interesting thing is, Sony's always really supported the fighting game community, the FGC and FGC games as well. So, a lot of people don't realize that the games like Street Fighter are actually only on, like Street Fighter 5 is only on PS4 and therefore PS5 as well. It's not even available on Xbox. So the one thing that's interesting to me is because Smash Brothers was huge at Evo when it was available in 2019, and it was going to be available as Ultimate in 2020, is will Sony allow Smash Brothers to go to Evo, and then B, will Nintendo allow for Smash Brothers to go to Evo in the 2021 edition? Now, I have a very firm view, but do we want to read out the statement first, Swinny?
Yeah, so after the news came out, Nintendo released a statement that basically said, Nintendo has enjoyed engaging with fans at past EVO tournaments and wish the show organisers the best with their new venture. We will continue to assess EVO and other opportunities as we plan for future online and offline Super Smash Bros. Tournament activity.
What's a laugh for, Mike?
No, nothing. Just I've worked with PR stuff before, and this is just so many words yet says so little.
I totally disagree. Nintendo generally tries to doesn't even comment about these kind of things. The only
This isn't even a comment. It's like such a
no, but you got to understand
we're not really doing anything.
But you got to understand the organization and how they operate, right? Nintendo almost never comments. Like, you go through all things that happen around Nintendo and Nintendo things, they refuse to comment. They just don't put anything out there. When they do, it's always a bad sign. So they did this with there was a college tournament. So basically, there was these folks who wanted to set up a college, like a version of Evo, but for colleges across
I
America.
remember something about that. Yeah,
And Nintendo
yeah.
sent something out early saying basically we're looking at what our options are and all these kind of things. Yeah. And then later they sent a note to the organizers saying you cannot use Smash Brothers at your tournaments. And that was the most popular game at the tournaments. Huh. To me, I look at this and I go, Sony's running it. Sony and Nintendo have bad blood going back, 30 years. I think that this to me means Smash Brothers will not be going to Evo. They won't allow it to go to Evo.
Yeah, but that's what I'm trying to say. They're subtly it's such a political thing to say as opposed to just saying we're not doing it.
By the way,
we're pulling out.
We covered that story back on episode 23.
Yeah, because I do remember that actually. Yeah, I remember.
Yeah.
I don't know if I was on the podcast at the time.
And all of these events were just after we started just before we started the podcast. Because I remember Sweeney and I talking about it, offline, obviously, and the podcast hadn't started with all the crazy stuff happening in the Smash community as well. But where do you think this goes? Do you think this is Smash Brothers is going to be going to Evo, Sweeney?
Not in 2021, that's for certain. Because not only would Nintendo, not only have Nintendo probably not 100% made, their full decision on it yet, but also it's Evo Online for 2021. So they're not going to choose Smash Brothers anyway this year.
Yeah.
So, and that's one of the reasons why if people are looking at those initial batch of games that they've announced for the Evo Online event in August, which is Street Fighter V, Tekken 7, Mortal Kombat 11, and Guilty Gear Strive. Well, one of the reasons Smash Bros. Wouldn't be there is because, 100%, it's not a game that you'd run an online tournament for.
Yeah, the code's terrible.
Yeah, but with this, so I was watching some stuff. So Maximilian Dude, very well known in the fighting game community. And he had a really interesting take on this. Is that this is pretty much up to Nintendo, I think.
Definitely.
It's very much. And I agree with his thoughts exactly that Evo and probably Sony would be more than happy to have Smash Brothers at an Evo event, an in-person actual tournament event. But it is the question of if you've got Smash Brothers being presented and essentially the people that the tournament organisers report to are Sony executives, this would be almost against Nintendo's way of working to probably ever allow that. I mean, just when Evo in the past, Nintendo has been so tricky to deal with.
Or block games from going.
Yeah, and that was when Evo was completely independent from many other games publishers. I honestly think this is the last we've seen of Smash Bros.
I think this gives Nintendo the opportunity to pull out and argue that, well, look, they never say it publicly, but I think the perception, because people are already saying they don't think Smash Brothers will go back to Evo, and I think they'll just take advantage of that. I honestly think they never wanted it at Evo. I think, they have pulled it from Evo, like either Melee, and, they've had a huge amount of backlash for doing that. And I just think, especially all the events last year that happened, Swinny. So there was, as you said, there was so many allegations and substantiated allegations against like lots of different, gaming spheres, but including FGC and Smash Brothers community. I feel like Nintendo, just given their stance of being, super family friendly, they don't want to be associated with anything like that. So I feel like they'll take this as an opportunity to also try to pull out Smash Brothers from as many events as possible. Because I genuinely don't think they want that whole scene to happen. Because I think they just look at it as downside risk for their brand. Now, I think from a commercial perspective, it's kind of crazy because it certainly like helps sell Smash Brothers.
Yeah.
But, they're always looking at the super long-term Nintendo and looking at their brand and corporate image and things like that. And that kind of outweighs anything else that they do. So, look, if Smash Brothers does get pulled next year, so in the 2022 edition, imagine when you can have it face-to-face, Swinny. If they don't have Smash Brothers, it kind of, like, it feels more traditional, but it feels like it's very hard for it to truly be like the number one event, if that makes sense.
Well, do you know what I think is going to start happen? And I'm actually all for this. Is that, and as I mentioned, like that Maximilian Dude was talking about this as well, is that Evo's flirted with non-fighting games before. Now, sure, it's never been headliner games, and it was probably quite a while back, but it makes sense that Evo as a brand, like you think the name Evo, Evolution Championship Series, nothing about that from as like a logo and as a brand name specifies that it is for the fighting game community only.
Sure.
Now, obviously, we know that that's what it is, and we know that everyone that's into Evo is there to, there to play or watch fighting games. But to me, it makes sense to start to say, well, let's trial, maybe not right away, maybe in a couple of years. Let's start trialing other types of games. Ones that are very built on, an esports competitive style of
like
gameplay.
Rocket League or something.
Exactly. That would be an exact kind of thing. Now, we know a lot of those events have their own events and they're huge, especially your MOBAs, your League of Legends and things, and Dota. Like those they have their huge esports events already. But this is also a really good opportunity for Sony to start also, pushing some of their stuff. And I'm all for it, honestly, because I like the idea of Evo becoming more than it is. Because as much as it's huge and it's I love watching. Like, I generally don't watch the actual event. I usually just catch up on the highlights and stuff. But I like the idea of Evo becoming bigger than it has been in the past. And I think the only way you do that is by starting to move a little away and experimenting.
Yeah, because just like going on from there, I think, what I would love to see one day, and it was kind of going to happen with the Olympics last year, and now I'm not sure what the status is. I should check it. But last year, pre-pandemic, what was meant to happen was Street Fighter V and Rocket League were going to be the lead-up events to the Olympics. And they were going to have people participate from countries. So you had to qualify. You could qualify Rocket League in Australia and then represent Australia at the Olympics. Well,
awesome.
It wasn't officially, but it was in conjunction with the Olympics. But they were very clear. It was like, this is not the Olympics, but it's kind of like in collaboration with the Olympics, leading up to the Olympics.
So officially collaborating with the Olympics.
But not being the Olympics. But it's kind of like,
fair enough.
I think there is a opening for someone to do something like that. I think if you did a really short 1 week event and you had, some of the biggest competitive games in the world, and then you had people from different countries competing for gold, I don't know. I think that's a cool event, man. I'd be all for watching that.
So
I'd watch that.
It's basically the E-Olympics at that point.
Oh,
It would be the E-Olympics.
I'm sure that joke has been made thousands of times.
Maybe, yeah.
I don't know, because I'm not sure if it's a joke, but we'll see.
You laughed.
No, I liked it. But yeah, and Evo, to your point, I think Evo could do that. Like, I could totally see them going, hey, let's do it for a week and, branch it out to something different. I reckon that'd be pretty cool, actually.
See, and a lot of people are going to hate this, but I think if this helps Evo to grow, and obviously it's helping to continue because who knew what was going to happen. I'm happy with it losing Smash Brothers if it grows Evo in general. But I know for a lot of people, that is not something they would want. So I understand.
I just think it's a shame because when Smash Brothers was there, it's such a cool opportunity to actually, go, yeah, hey, it's all the best fighting games and the communities at one event, but you kind of lose that. But, that's part of life, I guess. All right, well, let's move on to the next story.